Hello, everybody, and welcome to the dialogue today. I want to actually put this disclaimer out before I actually go ahead and record this podcast so that you can listen to it. Today is a very sensitive day for me. However, I want to go ahead and use this day to radiate some type of positivity into the situation that I am currently going through in hopes that the transparency will help another person that is extremely scared of vulnerability, being fragile, and people actually seeing you at the core. We are living in a time right now where social media is taking over. All the pictures need to be happy. All the pictures need to be perfect, full of the perfect light. And I need someone to understand that we live in the world, but every day it's not going to be a day that is filled with so much light. And I say that with the utmost honesty. Some days you're going to go through it. Some days it's going to last for days, weeks, and months. Let's not be naive that life happens to all of us. So it is my hope that as I release this podcast, and I do believe that I am at the beginning of a healing journey, a new healing journey, because of the recent episodes of encounters that have taken place in my life. So it is with the hope of sharing this podcast in the state that I'm presently in today that it will help someone. So with that being said, welcome to the dialogue. I am your host, Patricia, and we're going to dive straight into it. So I'm going to title this message, Humility Before Honor. The name of this podcast is called Humility Before Honor. Normally, I do try to keep the podcast at a minimum time because I normally do those podcasts as I am driving to my destination, which is actually work in the morning about 5 a.m. So I don't know how long this podcast is actually going to go for, but let's just put the presumption in our mind that it is to help and encourage someone. So the title is called Humility Before Honor. And so there will be times in your life where you go through situations that inevitably break you. Let me say that again. You will go through situations that break you. I'm not going to say seem to break you because that would be unrealistic. That will be talking about this podcast under false pretense. I'm going to honestly go forward and say that situations break you. What I recently endured as a result of my pregnancy, as well as a job that I was working with in some personal relationships, actually made me look at things and or people and situations completely different. In every situation, it was designed and created to break me. For instance, during my pregnancy, a lot of people did not know that I was pregnant. I saw 15 doctors, the majority of them being abusive, misdiagnosing, overprescribing medication, as well as, unfortunately, not listening to the information being conveyed from the patient, which was myself. We saw 15 doctors, which resulted in me having to go to be induced in an emergency in a purpose of safety because the police were called on me because I would not allow the doctors to induce me because there was nothing wrong with me. My daughter stayed in the womb, the cozy womb, for 2 additional weeks. She was supposed to be due on New Year's. She didn't come until January 12th. Yeah, January 12th. And there was nothing wrong with her. And as of right now, there is nothing wrong with her because I went through advocacy to bat for my daughter and explain to the doctors, I don't need metformin. I'm not a diabetic. No, I don't have cervical cancer. So no, you can't scrape me. You can't do a colposcopy because that can possibly lead to miscarriage. No, I don't feel like poking myself 7 times a day, but upon your recommendation, I will do so because you seem to believe that just because my sugar spikes for inopportune times of the night because I'm eating a snack and it's up to 1:20 in the morning. Not every day, not every other day. When I snack, you assume that I am a diabetic. Not true. And so also with that, I was on an aspirin for 5 months that I didn't need to take because I never had high blood pressure. With all that being said, my daughter and I saw 15 doctors and they all did the same thing. And so that was humiliating to go to a doctor knowing that you sit with your body every day and you can tell them what you're diagnosing me with is not how I feel, and they don't listen to you. And so you're painted a certain type of way in your records when they notate the information in your file to fit their narrative of what they want to do with you. Humiliation. And then you fast forward to 3 months later, and I spent 3 months home with my daughter, and it was wonderful. It was lovely. The bonding time was amazing. To start a job that was filled with racial discrimination, toxic work environment, harassment, and many other illegal practices that you can think of, all to be wearied out, overworked, to the point where I inevitably had to quit, which is the purpose of me being on this podcast today. I quit my job today. And let me explain to you why the situation was humiliating. The first day that I started this job, I was made or asked to bring shopping carts, Walmart shopping carts, from the back of the facility to the front outside. That was not my job, nor was it in my job description. It took a Caucasian woman to ask me, why were you the one to do that? And then the saga begins. From being yelled at, to talk to disrespectfully, to yelled at in front of patients, to overworked, to being demeaned and degraded in meetings, to be made a fool out of because of the content or information they didn't feel was suitable. I would be talked about in front of the staff in our staff meetings. Humiliating, embarrassing. And this lasted for 5 months. On Monday, the 12th, it will be 5 months. So I was brought into this organization under the pretense that they actually wanted to help the patients. And anybody that knows me, I am a community person. I love seeing people get ahead. I love seeing people progress. I love seeing people healed. However, after working at this job for 5 months, I now know and believe that was not the narrative of the position that I assumed as a chemical dependency counselor. What is a chemical dependency counselor? That is someone that counsels people, talks to people, gives advice and insight to people that are struggling with illicit substances, drugs. And anybody that knows anybody that is on drugs, it is an up and down upheaval of evil. One day you're good, the next day you're bad, one day you're sober, 8 years you're sober, and then the next thing you know, you relapse. It's an emotional roller coaster. So one can only think that as a counselor, dealing with this genre of patients, someone as myself, a counselor, would need backing and mental fortitude and breaks, which would be nice. However, this environment was so abusive and toxic to the point that my patients were even aware that I was not treated right, I was not treated properly, and also that the people that were over me, as they said it, were incompetent and unable to perform the position and work duties that they had been hired for. Unfortunately, as a counselor, and many of you know that when you are a counselor, you do have to notate what the patients say. If you don't note it, it didn't happen. Many of my notes were combed over by my superiors, which caused them to be upset about what the patients were saying and caused them to retaliate on me. I recently got wind last week prior to my departure that there was some type of production quota that I needed to meet. I was never aware of that, and honestly, it wasn't true. All of these new rules and regulations made up on a daily basis to try to either trap me up, exhaust me, or make me tired. Imagine getting up at 4 a.m. with a 3, 4, 5-month-old to get her dressed as well as yourself, to leave out of the house by 4:45, to drop her off at daycare, to get back on the road, to arrive at your job at 5:45, to start your first patient at 6 a.m. in the morning. There is no time for breaks. There's no time for eating. Oh, you can eat, but you had to basically stay on the clock. On top of that, a door being open, patients be able to come in and talk to you while you're trying to document, and if you're trying to eat a snack. Self-care, nothing there. Embarrassing, absolutely. Emails sent across a web chain to demean and degrade verbiage or written information from myself. Co-workers that presumed to be friends, however, had ulterior motives, which were 2 of them, to get into the superior's position because they felt like she was inadequate. My superior over the entire company location, upset because of the way that I dressed, compliments that I received from other patients, if my hair looks nice, if my clothes look nice, if we had a great session. Anger and rage displayed in this person's face simply because other people liked and applauded the work that I did. Abusive, toxic, humiliating. Not only that, we know that life happens. So, of course, other interactions with people outside of my job consisted of friends who knew that I had a baby and would not be able to spend as much time with them because I'm taking care of a newborn. Became extremely selfish and overlooked needs that I had as a mother. And so they felt like it was my responsibility to take them on as a child when they're not my biological child, to be available for conversations or knowledge or wisdom because I'm now their counselor. Humiliating. To sit and to cry because you need help and there's no one else around, but you are pouring and giving and exuding all amounts of, I hate that word, energy, strength, let's say, for lack of better words, strength that you can to take care of your baby and keep your job while keeping your head on straight. Anxiety through the roof. But able to maintain a caseload of 73 patients that was inevitably decreased to 50 when a supervisor arrived. However, he doesn't know how to do his job effectively because he's always in the back communicating, chatting, and talking to other coworkers because they both have the same mission: to steal the treatment director's job. Humiliating. Asking for help but not feeling like you're receiving it. Humiliating. Making mistakes and being posted across the email chain or in a meeting. Humiliating. I say all that to say, humiliation hurts. It breaks your spirit. And all you're challenged to do, which seems like is total insanity, because insanity is the definition of doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. My insanity, every morning getting up to go to work, hoping that human resources would get the documentation, the 36 to 45 pages of information that they said to document, to send in so they could have proof of what this woman and these people and staff were doing. All for it to come back inconclusive, that they could not find anything substantial to approve my accusations. Humiliating. More or less called a liar. So, with that being said, in this brief, wonderful opportunity to tell you, humility comes before honor. I left that job today, very somber and very sad for my patients, because they enjoyed the sessions. They enjoyed the time that we spent together. They enjoyed getting a different perspective about life and substance usage and family. I myself, being a survivor of 2 parents that were actively addicted, and that was my story that I used to get them home to their children and their family. Go home. You're missing out on great children, a great lifestyle. What are your plans? What are your goals? What do you see yourself doing in life? Humiliating. After sessions being yelled at and talked about and not supported. Humiliating. However, humility comes before honor. And I stand here today, a woman with a lot more compassion for people that try to sabotage other people's success because they themselves feel inadequate or unimportant or invalidated, even though many times they have better degrees, licensures, or even sometimes time in the work field. But I have experience. I have personal experience. And so as today, I cried out to God multiple times, like, Father, I don't understand. I wasn't really overly concerned about what the patients would think because they could see it for themselves. So what's understood doesn't need to be explained. They themselves being people of abuse and being talked to and treated in a demeaning, degrading fashion. I don't think there's much to explain to them. However, like I said, humility before honor. I was humiliated by staff, but honored by my patients. Majority of all of them said, I know you're here because you care. I know you're here because God sent you here. When I would explain the story of how I actually got the job, because I never applied. I never applied to this job. It popped up in my Indeed. They said, hey, we found your resume. We think that you'll be a wonderful candidate for this position. Where would you like us to send your resume to? I will go to the location in Kit, not really thinking too much about it. However, from that day, I knew that I was in for a challenge because my supervisor continued to tell me how she was overwhelmed, how many treatment center directors don't last, and how she's exhausted and tired. And of course, she played the somber pity card with me because I actually felt bad for her. However, when it came to the point when I was not going to do her work because I wasn't paid to do her work, retaliation began. And on every instance that was possibly capable in her power, she used her position to usurp authority over me in the most negative, humiliating way. And to this day, I feel bad, not for myself, because every season has a date of turnover. My heart goes out to people who sabotage people's success, not realizing that the job was not about me and it was not about them. It was about the patients. The patients who showed up at 6 a.m. just to divulge personal information about their lives because they had no friends or no family or no relatives that would accept them any longer because of the mistakes that they made, the stigma that they endured for making honest mistakes of being addicted to substances. You can catch my latest podcast, I Hate the Word Addict, which came from my sessions with these patients. They were loving, they were caring, they were nice, they were gentle, they were giving, but they were what many would classify them as addicts. And once you get that brand on your back, it's hard for anybody to put their purse around you and trust you, or trust you with around your man because they say you sleep around, or you're a prostitute, or you do anything you can to get the finances that you need to get the drug of your choice. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to dispel that notion that is not true. I have met some of the most classiest, the most intelligent, the most risk-taking, faith-believing, God-serving people with problems. And I know that you're going to put a question mark behind the verbiage of God serving. You would not believe how many encounters I had at my job where I was going through the same thing that they were in their life, and they would give me insight based on their information, and I would use it. So many of them enlightened my perspective about life because that's what they had been through life. They were survivors, learning how to finally thrive through trying to recover. It was the most rewarding position that I've done in a long time. I've been a peer supporter. I've been a caseworker. This counseling position, to be able to give insight to someone and they come back weeks later or a week later to say, hey, I thought about what you said and it makes sense. And I've been doing it, and you can actually see that it's working as they say that it's working. They do the assignments because they're excited about it. These people, many of them determined for a life of change. Humility before honor. This is the longest that I've ever stuck out at a job where I've been treated so ill. I've had different positions before and somewhat of the same magnitude, and I left. And this time I stuck it out because I understood there was a greater purpose. Someone was depending on me to get to my desk in the morning. Someone was depending on me to show up for them. Humility before honor. In this position, who showed up for me? And as I crumbled for the past 5 months without getting breaks, without hardly eating, without getting sufficient water, without actually preaching, doing what I preached in regards to self-care and loving yourself, I stand before you today a woman that is extremely exhausted, whose mental capacity is not there because it feels as though all I want to do is sleep and rest from all the nights that I stayed up trying to go to bed at 7 or 8, getting up at 11 or 12 and staying up until the next day when my shift started, only to be able to go to bed later on in the afternoon at 8 or 9 because I had to tend to my daughter. Deliberate, absolutely. As I said, you will feel broken. But one thing I do know and do understand is that in the breaking, this is something that God allowed for me. It not only allowed me to see my patient, it also allowed me to see the staff members that they themselves need help. They themselves need God. And if that's what I was there to offer, I hope that I did it in a way that they will never not understand that God was with me. He kept me. He helped me do my documentation. He helped me see patients back to back to back, sometimes 5 to 6 patients in a day. And sometimes I was only working a 6-hour shift. So that's 6 hours of talking to people and counseling and giving insight. It was rewarding and fulfilling, but very exhausting. Humility before honor. I stand today as someone that actually left the job, not feeling defeated, but understanding that God said, you've done what you were supposed to do. You ran your race at this job. And now I want to refresh you and restore you and help you understand on a greater level so I could take you higher to another dimension. And that is where the honor is. Yes, I was humiliated and degraded and talked about. But on days when I would walk in, I would hold my head high. I would say good morning with a smile on my face, ready to see the next patient. They taught me to walk fearlessly and boldly in the position that God has given me. They taught me that other people's opinions of you don't define you. They don't define where God is taking you. And ultimately, it can't stop where God is taking you. It showed me that God has brought me so far in my life for me to go through as much as I have as far as being homeless in my childhood and a lot of betrayal from friends and people, that God is honoring me because he keeps my heart soft. He makes sure that I don't hate people that hate me, despise people that despise me, and that I ultimately want the best for people, even if they don't want it for me. And that's not even the kicker. There's more to come. There's more to come. I want to encourage someone, if you are being humiliated, if you are being treated in a magnitude of a slavery where you're being made to do things that you don't want to do so that the other person can feel like they have control and authority and power over you. If you are being humiliated, but you're showing up every day to do what you need to do, keep going. God knows the ending to the story. He's not surprised by what's happening. He's using this situation to refine you, to help your character, to help you to produce fruit. And ultimately for me, he used it to produce another level of boldness when I would be in my staff meetings with my superior and supervisor and have to sit there and tell them that these people are not cash cows. You are not going to use and exploit their experiences for your own capital and financial gain. Persecution, of course. Mistreatment, of course. But it was worth it to advocate for a class of citizens and individuals who are deemed unredeemable. It was rewarding. And as a woman that stands exhausted and tired, who sits on this podcast with her eyes closed, even at this moment, ready to go to sleep, I send this podcast out to encourage you. You are strong. You are able. You are capable. Nothing that they say to try to humiliate you or to try and make it seem as though you're inferior, that you don't have the capacity, that's a lie. All of this happened because you are capable. The humiliation happened to show you are capable. And you turn that humiliation around, and then you honor yourself. You take care of yourself, and then you see where God places you for his glory. You see what you overcome, and you understand it was nothing but your Father that kept you through the fire. And then you have peace, knowing that you did the best that you could, that you showed someone that you care, but more importantly, that you showed somebody Christ. Through your capacity to endure and persevere through hardship like a good soldier. Job well done. I congratulate you and I celebrate you today. And I want to just leave this little disclaimer. Now it is time for you to be refreshed and put all the love and care that you did into others into yourself. Humility before honor. You have to go low. You have to be brought low before you can be raised up, because it's not going to be you that does the raising. It is going to be the Lord who will put you where he needs to put you. Strengthen, establish you again so that you can be more effective than you were before. Thank you so much for tuning into the dialogue today. I really hope that you share this podcast with someone that may be experiencing some type of humiliation or retaliation, to help them understand, endure. And in the end, don't be weary in well doing. You are going to reap. The reaping may be more peace. It may be more happiness. It may be the fact that you're not miserable. Misery loves its own kind. And maybe you were humiliated because you didn't fit in, because you weren't miserable. And you had happiness and you had joy, you had peace, and that was envied and hated. Nevertheless, walk away with your head held high, knowing that even if your soul is tender because of all of the infractions and wounds sent against you, verbally or mentally or emotionally, you made it out. And now, after the humility, comes the honor. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'll be back with more information. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.